let's go for it.
I gotta say, leading into this show, I woke up this morning singing "Let's Talk About Sex" in my head. And if I didn't have to worry about rights, I would totally play that in right now. So invite to the listener, just start like in your head, be like, "Let's talk about sex, Dr. Renee." So Dr. Renee Wellenstein, doctor of osteopathic medicine, worked as an OBGYN, then moved into practicing functional medicine, which we're going to talk about a bit in a second for the listener who doesn't have any idea what that is. And that's because over a decade ago, Dr. Renee, the beautiful and talented Dr. Renee, was like living the dream. She got this busy, successful medical practice, perfect husband, toddler twins, like model life, beautiful home, dream house, yada, yada. And then in that dream, Dr. Renee fell off her horse. Oh, the problems we all think we wish we want to have, but broke her back. And unfortunately, at that point, was walking down the path, which she'd always been on the other side of, right? This medical practitioner who anybody who has a chronic illness, which I do, or has had a catastrophic life-affecting injury, which I know many of the listeners listen to the show because we talk about this kind of stuff, brain fog, severe pain, lifestyle dysfunction, like all of these things, and now is in the soup of Western medical paradigms. And I'm going to ask you to share, Dr. Renee, kind of where that brought you as a medical practitioner in this system, not finding answers for yourself when supposedly you're living the dream.
Yeah, it was frustrating, you know, and when I look back, I thought it was the dream life. And when I'm sitting in this puddle of misery in my mind, it wasn't actually the dream life. And, you know, I was actually literally going 150 miles an hour. And when I fell off that horse and broke my back and was put at bed rest with a shower chair and the walker, I was at 0 miles per hour, negative. Like I had to literally sit there and look at my life. And over the course of those 2 years, I was stuck in that conventional medical model whereby I had all these symptoms. And they, interestingly enough, when I look back, they sort of evolved the slower I got and the more I looked at how I felt. And because up until then I was going so fast, I didn't even know how I felt. And that's why I say I thought it was the dream life, because I thought I was crossing off all the boxes, doing all the things that a doctor should do. And so, yeah, I was having these weird symptoms of, you know, I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. I was gaining weight. I really was lacking motivation to do anything aside from lay on the couch. My scope of practice was limited. I could no longer deliver or operate. So my purpose in life was essentially in my mind gone. There's really no reason for me to get out of bed in the morning. And, you know, I got to this point where I really felt helpless and hopeless. Like here I am surrounded by all of my medical colleagues, and one by one, they're giving up on me. I flunked out of physical therapy. They don't want someone with chronic pain. You know, my doctor would say, I don't know how many more drugs I can give you, you know? So I laid in bed one night to my husband and said to my husband, like, I can't picture going on living like this. And I knew I was rock bottom when I contemplated no longer living. Here in the next 2 rooms, I have toddler, now they're like 6-7-year-old twins. And here's their mom thinking like, I'm a deadbeat mom and an awful wife. And I just don't want to go on living like this. If this is how I have to go on living, because, you know, up until now, like I was told like, there's nothing more we can do for you. So I gave it one last straw because I was like, this kind of feels like what the textbooks say is depression, right? Like that's the only little box I could shove myself into. Went back to my doc, and of course I diagnosed myself, and she's like, yeah, you know, I think you do have depression. Your life completely changed. So I danced down that road for about 6 months, 2 different medications, all the side effects did not resolve my symptoms. And then I was like, there is something else going on, but what is it? At this point, my doc is like, nope, nothing more.
I don't know. We did all the things we
did all the things. There's no specialist anymore I can send you to. Like, you just have to live with it.
Yes, you're just going to be on painkillers the rest of your life. Sorry.
Yep. And I'm telling you, it was a painkiller followed by actually one mild, one strong, and then the other ones to counteract the constipation and the nausea, because I couldn't function without all those pills.
The brain fog, the dizziness, all the reasons I don't take painkillers for my chronic pain condition.
Exactly. And, you know, it's really interesting. I sat there going, gosh, there's got to be something else going on, but I couldn't think of what it could be, nor could my regular doc. So ironically, and I'm a big lover of intuition and the universe and things happening for a reason. And ironically, at this time, a functional medicine doc came into my world. I didn't even know what that was. I had no idea. I was selling skincare at this point for fun.
Can you tell us what
literally.
it is? What is functional medicine?
Functional medicine is essentially getting to the root cause of why you're feeling the way you're feeling. As a conventionally trained doctor, I was, you come in with a symptom. I have a nice little algorithm that like, okay, these symptoms point to this diagnosis. And further from that diagnosis, I have an algorithm of medications that I can prescribe or procedures to do or what have you. But it's really protocol algorithm based. And essentially, you give me a symptom, I'll give you a pill for that symptom and send you on your way. And versus functional medicine. And again, I didn't know until I got on the phone one night with this doctor. I was like, and she tells me like 5 minutes, I don't think you have depression. I think you have this condition called adrenal fatigue. I had no idea what that was. I'm sitting in my bed with my laptop on my lap, Googling adrenal fatigue. And it was like, this is me. This is exactly what I have. How did I not know this in the conventional world? Like, how is this out there? I am so educated at this point, 15 years in the, medical world. How did I not know this?
Yeah.
And that was the first like aha moment. And so this woman, knowing her 5 minutes completely changed my life because she helped me and gave me my hope back that I could actually have a normal life again. So then on the tail of that, she said, would you like to join me in functional medicine? And of course,
so she gave you a job.
Gave me a job, sight unseen. I just met this woman and I Googled it quickly to figure out what the heck. So I didn't sound like an idiot. I'm like, here I am on the phone with this doctor. I don't even know what she does. But my intention when I went into that call was like, nobody else is helping me. I don't know what this doctor does, but maybe she can offer some insight as to what's going on. And she not only offered insight, we actually obviously confirmed the diagnosis with some lab testing and a visit and such, but offering me the job, I saw that. And when I actually saw what a functional medicine doctor does, this was the second aha moment. Like, this is where I'm going to get my purpose back in my life. Because if I am running around and I am surrounded by my medical colleagues, and I can't get to the root cause of why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, I'm just getting drugs poured on me that don't help me. How many other women are out there feeling exactly the way I'm feeling this hopeless, helpless feeling, maybe even acting on some of those thoughts that I had, and they're not getting the help that they're looking for? And so it was a no-brainer that night. Like, I hadn't even met this woman. I accepted a job with her and I'm like, yep, I'm going back and doing this fellowship. And the rest is history. I did. I signed up the next day for the fellowship out of University of South Florida, which is the American Academy of Anti-Aging. And I completed my fellowship in functional medicine and took a job with her.
Well, and I want to circle back to a few things that I think you bring up that are important to just revisit a little. The first is like, thank you for your vulnerability and being willing to admit on the mic, like, hey, I had some suicidal ideation in my suffering. Because, personally, I know I've mentioned this at least once on the show before that, I have the one type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome that's not life-threatening. It just makes you horribly uncomfortable and in intense pain sometimes and dysfunctional in a way that most people in your age group aren't. So in my mid-20s, I had the functioning of someone in their 60s or 70s who'd had a significant injury. And the number one cause of death for people with my type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is suicide, because they can't find a community of people who understand what they're going through. And they get to this place of hopeless and helpless. It's your phrase that is perfectly spot on. And this idea that I am purposeless in my suffering. But the other thing that you bring up that I think is tangential to that is, through your accident, you had this experience of loss of purpose, but through your seeking for answers, rediscovered new purpose. And so often I think we talk about purpose in a way where it's static, right? Like, oh, I have this one purpose. And then if I lose my ability to fulfill that one purpose, life is over. And I always like to frame purpose as emergent, right? We go through experiences that change our interests or change our skill sets or change our calling. And we are called to the next instance of purpose. And your story really illustrates that, I think, very well.
Yeah. And I want to comment when you said about, the one of the other things I didn't include in the story is the validation part, because
Yeah.
that night she gave me my hope back, and helped me, but she validated my symptoms. And how many women are out there with symptoms that they're told by their doctor it's normal, right? And like we know in our gut, like this is not normal, but our doctor's telling us is normal, and we start thinking we're crazy. And that was kind of the point I was getting to, where I'm like, if no one's believing me, this must all be in my head. I must be making this up. And that night when she said, no, you're not, and I'm like, I wanted to cry. I'm like, oh my gosh, you get me. Like you just finally listened and you get me. You hear me,
And I
The
think
other
you bring up a good point there, that for coaches, for trainers, for any lifestyle practitioner, validation of that person in front of you is massive, because regardless of whether or not you experience it, see it yourself, that is their reality in that moment.
Mhm.
Even if you're going to reframe it, even if you're going to challenge it, like, because you don't know. I can't tell you how many clients I have worked with who, through years and years of their doctors disregarding their symptoms, and then it turns out, or minimizing them, right? Like, oh, it's your weight, oh, it's your this, oh, it's your that. And in actuality, they had truly legitimate medical considerations that were being dismissed under the umbrella of like, it's in your head. Well, it's still
Mhm.
real, even if even if we only find evidence of it in your perception, it's still real.
Mhm. I absolutely agree. And as far as purpose, for those 2 years, I was searching for a purpose. Like I got all the books of what a doctor can do aside from sitting in the office or hospital doing what they were trained to do. And it was, malpractice, like going to expert witness in a court, working for pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies and all these things. I'm like, that does not light me up. Like that is not changing lives.
Yeah.
And you're right. I was not even looking for this purpose. I really had to just seek help for myself. And in seeking help for myself, I found my next calling, and that's functional medicine. And this is, as far as I can see, what I'm going to do until the day I die, because it is just life changing.
So, you mentioned adrenal
Mhm.
fatigue being a kind of hormonal imbalance.
Mhm.
Following that threads, learning about hormonal imbalance, working with hormonal imbalance led you to kind of the next big professional moment. Would
Mhm.
you like to unpack
Yeah.
that for our
Yeah.
listeners? And now start playing salt and pepper in your mind, everybody.
Well, and just like the purpose of functional medicine, my calling to focus on low libido in women really didn't come intentionally. It actually came out of the need to talk about things that aren't getting talked about out there. So I've been in women's health for over 20 years. I'm conventionally trained as an OBGYN. Like hormones are like my middle name, right?
That's a jam.
And it's my jam. I love it. And what I struggled with, so a year ago, I was just another online health consultant in the mix of a pandemic, right? Talking about the gut and the immune system, all and adrenals, like all the things I love to talk about. But, every post I saw on social media, every blog post, like everyone was talking about the same thing, and it becomes white noise after a while, right?
Yeah.
So I actually pull back and say, again, purpose. I need to make a difference in this world. I don't like to be white noise. And what is an area that I personally have struggled with, that I've struggled with clinically, that I know women need help in? And all of a sudden, this light bulb moment, libido. And
Sexy time.
and I have to say, I was a little scared because twofold. Number one, as a conventionally trained OB, I never had a good drug for libido. Like I never really understood why a woman would have a low libido. Every time a woman would come into my office when I was in gynecology and complained of a low libido, I would sink in my chair. And because I didn't really have the magic pill for her. And that's really how we're trained, right? And I'd shun her out the door with like, go de-stress or go work on your
Yeah.
relationship or
Get a
whatever.
massage, have some
So
oysters.
yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay. And so it was a little scary when I decided to embark upon this topic, because I had continued to play with it after gynecology, because it was one of those topics that frustrated the dickens out of me, but I knew it was a much bigger problem that we were talking about, but I didn't even want to talk about it because I didn't have the solution. When I got into functional medicine, I started seeing health differently. For instance, if a woman has mood changes and, you know, a perceived hormone imbalance that could affect her libido. If, you know, her stress is causing a female hormone balance could lead to a little, like, I saw all these like little different roadmaps of like, okay, it could go this way, it could go that way. Oh, where's she going on this roadmap of low libido? So I really started to love the complexity of the subject. I did play. So we're conditioned also to think, oh, we're like men, give us testosterone and we're going to be all sexy again. No, 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 no. I tried that. Really. I tried it with the one non-FDA approved medication back in the day with some menopausal women that I felt incredibly uncomfortable giving to women, but I did to try it out. And I also prescribed testosterone cream in my functional medicine office to find that I love testosterone for women. Don't get me wrong, but it was not the fix it all for libido for women. Some women it helped. I'm not going to say it doesn't help anyone, but the majority of women, it wasn't the fix that I was looking for them, which really got me looking a little bit deeper. Like, what else could it be? You know, if I can't quote unquote fix them with this, what else? And, you know, in my work in functional medicine and now online, I've continued to sort of evolve and really look at a woman as far as like, we just have to, just like anything in functional medicine, low libido is just another symptom. And we have to just peel back the layers of, okay, what is the root? Like, what is at the root causing the hormone imbalance, right? Like, you know, because again, even when I was in the office, I was just giving women hormones, but especially for the men that I worked with for 4 years, like once I gave them testosterone, they never wanted to figure out the why behind their low testosterone. And I fix their libido easily with testosterone. That's like the difference between men and women. Women, not so easy. And a lot of times if I address their female hormones and balance them with a prescription, a lot of times that catalyst of like, I want to know why my estrogen is so dominant was gone. Right. So now I'm on this new, like whole new, like shift of like, okay, now we're going to find out why. And there's a lot of things that we can do without having to give extra hormones.
Yeah, I think what I hear in here is this foundational paradigm shift between like treating a symptom directly, which is very much how our Western model is set up. Even, you know, very recently I went to a new GP, you know, I moved to upstate New York earlier in the year. I finally got my new doc and she is the most wonderful, patient-minded, trauma-informed doctor I have ever encountered in my life, like total game changer for me. But even then, like we're talking and she's trying to order tests and she has to put a diagnosis between every single test, even though she's looking to try to take it from an integrative medicine approach. And we're trying to get these broad panels to just get a snapshot. Every test had to be justified for the insurance to cover it. Right. So even if you are this open-minded doc, you're still stuck in a system that is diagnostic and symptom-based. Yep. So gear shifting from that into this focus of, well, effects of causes. And I think to your point, what I've noticed after a decade in practice as, you know, just a general lifestyle practitioner, as a coach and as a trainer is, yeah, maybe I play whack-a-mole with somebody, you know, like, oh yeah, your hip doesn't feel right. Here's the corrective exercise that I know works with that hip mobility issue, but I never bother to figure out what's underneath that. I'm just going to cause a different kind of thing, right? Like, oh, now your sacrum hurts, your knee hurts because we just moved it up or down the chain. We didn't solve the underlying thing. You're just playing whack-a-mole and we're just going to see it show up somewhere else, right? Like the guy who you give testosterone cream to so that he can throw down, but you never address that he's not sleeping enough or he's not eating well. We're just going to see a different downstream effect, right?
Yeah. And yeah, or the toxins that are lowering his testosterone. I mean, they're just going to continue to plummet his testosterone. He's going to need more and more replacement. But he feels great because he's getting the replacement. So yeah, it's really interesting when you sort of pull back. Like I love supplements, by the way. Like a lot of times you can like, oh, they're like medications, but I strategically use supplements because you can abuse supplements just like you do medications, right?
Agreed.
And I am big into giving supplements to my ladies I work with, especially in the beginning, to kind of give them that little extra, you know, like B complex for a little extra energy, like give them that little extra oomph to get them to figure out why, like what are the underlying causes? Because I work with a lot of really exhausted women with adrenal issues as one of their underlying reasons for their low libido. And a lot of times I'll have to strategically use supplements in the beginning to kind of give them enough get up and go to
Yeah.
really care
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
why they're feeling the way they're feeling. Cause a lot of women are like, if they get the gusto to come and work with me and do the work to figure out they're still, I got to respect that they're tired. Another thing I wanted to just comment that you said earlier, what I've learned in functional medicine too, is really to listen to the client. I mean, now I don't have patients. I work online, so they're all clients, but that is something I didn't respect as a conventional medical doc. We are kind of trained, and I don't want to say that we're God, like we're not God, but like we are the experts and don't challenge us kind of thing. And granted, I did go through a lot of schooling to get my degrees and to have the education I have, and I'm so super proud of it. But that doesn't mean I know how your body feels.
Yeah.
And I think, and I like to say that I wasn't so full of myself and ego that I like poo-pooed women all the time, but I really wouldn't listen like I do now, as far as like, your body better than I do. You're living in that body every day. It is my goal for you to really feel and be present in your body so you can feel it getting better as we work on things. And versus, in my conventional world, like if someone came in and said they saw something on the internet, I was like, oh no, like I was always, and I don't know if it's a threatened thing or what, like now I love being challenged or learning new things from my clients. I'm like, oh, I didn't hear about that. Let me go take a look, but I do think, a big message for your audience is just continue to be advocate for your own health, like, especially with the way healthcare is going right now, no one cares about your health as much as you do. And sometimes it does require looking online. I'm sorry to say, you got to not, be careful with your resources and your sources of information. But, sometimes you just have to get a little ammunition and go on in there and challenge what you're being told, or ask for a specific test if you think you need to dig it a little deeper.
Well, and I know I've said this before on this show that, heck, I said it. I remember saying it the last week's episode that will have been a month ago by the time this episode comes up, is that if you are working with a practitioner and you get a sense from them that you don't trust them, that is not the practitioner for you.
Nope.
And doing the footwork to find someone who you feel like you can build a relationship with and that is your genuine advocate. And to just recognize that there is a sense of privilege that comes with that, right? Like not everyone has those options because of the system that we have built. But for those of us who do have that privilege, to openly talk about how it should be like that for everyone, right? We should all be able to find practitioners who listen to us, who have the education to be trauma informed, who are patient or client centered, have unconditional positive regard for the human being in front of them, as opposed to the collection of symptoms in front of them, and have compassion for it. So we've gone down a weird rabbit hole, but I want to come back out a little bit. Oh no, we love rabbit holes here on BTF. But I want to come back out for a second to this idea of low libido. Like, how does someone know that it's low libido as opposed to like the people who are a bit more asexual, or like, what does that look like?
Well, and it's interesting because I've actually gotten a question on another podcast of like, I don't demonize low libido, like, or, a woman who really is not interested in intimacy. I'm not here to say that. I am here to stand up for the women that are out there. They say, I used to have a sexual desire. I don't have it anymore. And it bothers me. I want it back. I want to know why, right? Those are the women I'm speaking to. If you're the woman out there that says, I used to have it, I don't have it anymore, and I could care less, that's okay, right? That's okay. But it's the women out there that say, and there's so many, like when I started talking about this over a year ago, it got a little overwhelming in the beginning because I had so many women reaching out to me and like, oh my gosh, this is not normal. Oh my gosh, it's not because I have kids or because I'm getting older. Oh my gosh, there is help for this. And, I really, again, got a little overwhelmed by all the messages, but at the foundation of all of these messages were the women just essentially not feeling good on so many other levels physically. It was harming their relationships. And it's not to the saying, oh, he's saying this and that to me, which, I don't always love. Like, I understand that a partner might take it personally if you don't want to be intimate. And I've seen that over and over. But like, if you truly are like, I want to connect, I'm attracted to him, but it's just not there. and I want it to be there, and it's hurting my relationship and me and my marriage. Those are the ones that keep me awake at night. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to save all these marriages out there? It's, and the statistic, I don't know, it's grossly underestimated with the number of women out there with low libido. It was like 40 some percent, last thing I saw. And I don't even look at the percentages because these are not the women these women aren't speaking out.
And
So
doing the data analysis on this type of stuff is so challenging because it's so stigmatized to openly talk about this
correct.
kind of stuff, that
Yep.
deeper psychological challenge to even admitting that you feel low sexual desire and that you want to be intimate and can't bridge that gap regardless of marital status, right? That it happens to women in all kinds of lives.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Single, partnered, non-monogamous, whatever.
20, 50, it doesn't know any age. It's not biased with age either. I've seen it across the board, 20 some year old that you think would have the best libido tanked. And, versus a 70-year-old who you think should be tanked because of her hormones, amazing libido. Like, that's really what got me questioning, like in some women, it could be more than hormones, like, what is it? And so, and I do dive down, like, yes, the hormones I always say are the icing on the cake. We kind of go a little deeper with like a lot of the underlying things that affect women, like her mindset, how she feels about herself, how she's communicating. Does she tell, she's communicating what she needs in life, in her relationship. And, I like to say, like, in the bedroom as well, but in and out of the bedroom. Like, the women I work with, we start way outside the bedroom because they don't even want to be touched. They don't want to have connection. They want nothing to do with the bedroom. So if we get in the bedroom, that's another story. But like, we have to start the connection and the desire outside of the bedroom. And that's really the women I target.
Yeah, I say the whole time that we have been talking about what this looks like, I am thinking of my own clients who will confide in me that part of why they want to work on how they take care of their physical selves is that they don't want their partner to connect with them at all. They don't even want to be looked at because their mindset about themselves is so low that it is, whether we call it shame or whatever challenging emotion we want to label that constellation of, I don't understand why you even like me, let alone love me, let alone desire me, because that person's lens of themselves is so challenged, and working through those blocks and that mindset shift and, what it means to be wanted and wanting to be wanted and all of these other layers to it. So I'm glad to hear you mention it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's also these lifestyle components, right? Of like how we treat ourselves and what is expected of us and what we tell ourselves is expected of us, and how that builds a lifestyle.
Correct. Yeah. As women, we've taken on even more roles now post-pandemic. We had a lot of roles to begin with, and these stereotypical like roles that are just for women. Now they're not. And I feel this used to be me. I used to be that superwoman that did it all because I didn't want to ask for help. And I wanted to be given that trophy at the end of the day that I did it all and I didn't ask for help and I got it all accomplished. And you know what happened to me? I fell into bed at night, resentful that I didn't get any help. I didn't ask for help and I didn't get my trophy.
And when offered help, did you also turn it down? I know that's a me problem.
Of course.
Peek behind the Darlene curtain.
Yeah, of course. And I got to the point where I'm like, you know what? If I can't do it all, it's not a sign of failure. It's a sign that I'm taking care of myself, because there's some things that I want to do for myself that I can't do because I'm doing for everybody else. So I actually started to talk to my husband about doing certain things to help me. And, he's a great guy now. He'll ask, like, especially when he has time off of work, like he totally picks up the slack. And I say that, like, we're definitely, I have not great balance some weeks because he's working and I'm at home with a very, flexible schedule that I can actually do it all, versus like when he's off, he definitely helps. And that really helps me take care of myself, because I know the weeks, okay, like I'll get some in, not as much as I like. And those weeks that he's off, like I get a lot more, and he does the brunt of the making the dinners, grocery shopping and everything. And I can just sit in my world of functional medicine and taking care of others clinically and myself. So, and that didn't just happen though. I had to ask him and I had to get over myself. I had to get over my ego that I could do it all because.
Well, One of the big light bulb moments for me in this regard was Isaac Perel-Tensky, who's out of the University of Miami, has a whole construct of the idea of the exchange of meaning and mattering, that we want to do things that we know like create meaning and have our meaningful contributions to others, but we also want to know that we matter enough to others that they then to get to contribute to us. And somewhere in perusing his work, I had this light bulb moment of like, wait a minute, if I let other people do things for me, it feels good for them. Like I'm giving them an opportunity to support me, and then they feel good in the way that I feel good when I help other people. And by not letting them help me, I'm creating an artificial distance between me and this other person. And that really gear shifted for me, this like 2 years ago, how much I let other people in. Because I did have this Wonder Woman complex of I can do it all and you don't have to help me because I'm that competent, blah, 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 blah. And now being engaged to somebody whose love language is unquestionably acts of service, I don't think we could have been together if I had not figured that out a few years ago, because it would have been napalm in this relationship by me constantly shutting down his attempts to do nice things for me as his way of expressing love.
Yep. Yep. And when my husband's off, even he'll say, "Oh, I'll take the kids to school." And there's time I have to feel it. Like, do I have time? Do I want, and I'll stop and I'll say, "No, I want to take the kids to school. Can I take them? I want to take them." And there's a difference. I want, and like, I just have to sit. I'm like, no, I have the time. And I really enjoy drop off when I'm not rushed. I'm like, no, I really want to take the kids today. And so it just opened up that like communication. Cause I don't say that all the time. There's lots of times where he does help me. I'm like, that's super helpful because I have a podcast interview or something. And I say, thank you, that's really helpful. But it's that communication key that I see lacking in a lot of relationships because of what is quote unquote expected of women. Number one, what they perceive others expect of them and what they expect of themselves. And that leads to a lot of anger, frustration, resentment in relationships that's not being talked about. And when I get on a phone with a woman and she's like, yeah, I don't want to have sex with my husband because I can't stand him. And I'm like, okay, you don't need me right now.
Yeah.
You definitely need to let's unpack that a little bit, talk about, how he can help you. And let's see, because if he comes in on his phone after work and pops on the couch, are you asking him to help? Like you might be making dinner and the kids are doing their homework. Everything looks like it's under control. Meanwhile, you are so tired because you've been nonstop all day. If he came in and took over dinner responsibility, so you could go sit down for a couple minutes. And so you could, I don't know, do whatever you feel like you want to do. Like, how would that make you feel? Like, would that give you a little more like, oh, you appreciate me? Like you said, like I do matter. You are helping. But when you come in and you look like you got it all under control and he's tired too, he's just going to go sit on the couch, it's because he doesn't know, like you need to say what you need. They can't read our minds,
right? Regardless of the gender of your partner, it's this idea that no amount of hormonal creams or pills or injections or whatever are going to bridge the interpersonal gap, that if you're already exhausted, you're not going to want to be touched. Right. I think our big argument is about timing, where it's like, okay, he's a night owl, I'm a lark. Don't come in at 11 o'clock and wake me up. I'm in the middle of my deep sleep cycle. You need to so being willing to communicate about the what and the when, right? Like, what is it that I actually do need and want and desire that can get me to that space that has nothing to do with, what, obviously there's the hormonal imbalance piece that you can address, but then there's all these other lifestyle factors that we're not willing to step up to the plate on.
Yeah. And, there are many women that hormones look beautiful, or I'd replete them and they still don't feel that they want to be intimate. And I'm like, okay, what else is there? And that's again, why I started to look at all aspects of a woman's life and really start piecing together, like, what is it that I can help women with at a foundational level? And the mindset's foundational. Like I can give a woman all the creams in the world. Like if she, again, like you said, doesn't feel comfortable in her body, doesn't want to be seen naked, doesn't want to be touched because she has roles, I can't fix that with a hormone cream. Like that's something that, we need to work on as far as how she feels about being in her own body. And I get it. I'm not sitting here and saying, oh, embrace, and I do love to say, embrace the skin you're in. And, I'm all for, if you want to lose weight, great. If that's going to make you feel better, like that's not going to make you happy. Like, don't chase all those goals to make you happy. But if that's going to give you more comfortable and you're going to get healthier and all the things, great. But like during the process, try to love yourself as best you can, because, and know that your partner 9.9 times out of 10, they love you just the way you are. That's how they married you, regardless of weight or hair length or any stretch marks or cellulite or any of that. They don't see it. They see you for who you are when they married you. And you're just as attractive as you are now as were then. So like, I think, and men are very visual. If you have a male partner, like they want to see women naked, like many men, the more the curves better, like, so like,
yeah,
it depends on the kind of man you married or what partner you're with, what they enjoy. But I know, hearing from many male counterparts, that's what they love. And so like what we perceive as beauty or a beautiful body or whatever is not necessarily what others think.
What we have been conditioned to believe. And I mean, from my own perspective, I can definitely say at 6'1", nearly 200 pounds, I played collegiate rugby. Like, I am not your standard cover of Self magazine personal trainer. My fiance is 5'5". We have an 8-inch height difference.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah. Oh, me too. But it honestly, being with him changed how I thought about myself, because I didn't think of myself as the kind of attractive. I mean, and I've been married before. I had a 13-year marriage and still didn't think of myself as all that attractive. Definitely like, I don't look like a trainer, blah, blah, blah. Nope. Totally changed how I think about myself, because I allowed him to tell me how he sees me. And, in the gap between that relationship and like, certainly there were other partners who let me know the same information, but without that reflective lens, without allowing them to appreciate me, I saw myself as too big, too loud, too this, too that, too many roles, too many, like, because I had that story that I don't look like this template body that we're talking about. And, what I think we're missing in this conversation about like societal conversation about female libido, female desire is, often that comes in response to being appreciated, being validated, being praised. We have, like you said, men are very visual, or male identified bodies, like they tend to have very visual libido where they see a stimulus and react. Whereas a more female hormonal profile, we tend to respond to being the object of desire. And if you're not allowing that person in because you're uncomfortable, right? Like, that's a whole different ball game. Yeah. A lot more than hormones.
It's a lot more. And, and like I said, it's sometimes hormones play a part, and sometimes you need them repleted, or sometimes we need to address why they're out of balance. And sometimes you don't, like, there's a lot of sometimes, like, everyone's different, individualized, it's personalized medicine that I practice. But the core concept here is there's a lot you can do without hormones. To start working on it, because by the time you work on all those foundational things, like the mindset we were talking about, like the communication. And the third thing that I see a lot that's affecting almost 100% of relationships right now, at least 100% of the clients I work with, is stress, high stress.
Oh yeah.
That's affecting
not just libido.
Yeah. I mean, it tanks a lot of the hormones.
I would argue it affects 100% of human beings on this planet right now. Like, we're in a species level crisis of stress.
Correct. And, we wonder why, like, and again, like you were saying, like, biologically, our brains just function differently how we think. Like, men think of sex 250 sometimes a day, just because they have higher testosterone levels. Their brains are different as far as the sizes of the brain. Like, our brains as women are different. Like, we prioritize different things, and sex is not one of them, like, on a day-to-day basis.
I have a crazy story about this, if I can interrupt you for a second.
Absolutely.
Without identifying the male person in my life who went through this, someone I'm very close with had prostate cancer. We're going back well over a decade, and had the tumor removed along with that organ. And then had to go through what is essentially a chemical castration, right? A full suppression of his ability to generate testosterone in order to survive. And I'm glad to say that he did survive. But essentially what that did was he went through menopause and like had to go on and off that hormone like suppression therapy multiple times. It's actually what they do to a released violent sex offender in the state of New York. And around the same time, like weird side note, he, submitted letters to the government when it was being like, pushed as a form of cruel and unusual punishment and like all this other stuff. But the point where I'm going with this is when that happened, it switched off the part of his mind that is sexualizing the women around him. And he talked to me about it at the time, that it completely changed how he related to women because and he said it's actually really annoying to have that little like in the back of your head being like objectifying the human in front of you. And what a relief it was for him to no longer have that like click track in his mind, sexualizing all of the women he would encounter in a given day. Yeah. And I think about that when I think about the way in which we as women describe our male counterparts and our frustration and our this and our that. It's like their brains literally function differently, but also they don't understand that ours does too. Yeah. Sorry. Weird side tangent.
No. And, in talking about testosterone in men versus or hormone, estrogen, progesterone in women, I've always said, I feel like women get along better. Not that I necessarily think women should be without their hormones, but I do think that they survive better or like thrive better than men with low testosterone. I'd see men with low testosterone, and it's really interesting when they used to come into me, they'd have a year-long history of low energy, loss of muscle mass, gaining weight, crying at the drop of a pin, like all the things. And I would say like essentially like all these awful, like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like you're crying all the time and you're not, you're getting heavier and you're losing your muscle and you're not motivated to do anything. You're just laying on the couch. And I said, why did you come in today? Well, I don't want to have sex anymore. I'm like, wait. Like all these other things happened for the past year. And this didn't just happen once. This happened over and over and over. And it was really interesting to see that the men, when it hit the bedroom, they were in my office versus the women, they would come in with the low energy and I'm gaining weight and like, I'm highly stressed and all the things. And then I'd ask about their libido. They're like, what libido? Like, honestly, that's like the lowest on my list right now. Like, let's try to address everything else. And honestly, we addressed everything else. Lo and behold, a lot of times the libido would come back and it was amazing. So it's like hundreds of patients that I worked with that I saw this over and over. And I'm like, wow, like just the disparity between men and women when it came to hormone levels and the effects on their life and how they thought, like what was important to them.
Yeah.
And like, and again, with women, when I helped her address all those other things, how it affected her libido.
So if libido is so low on the priority list, does it matter? Like we're doing a whole episode on this. Like, why does it matter?
It does, because I do find that it's affecting it's contributing to her lack of self-worth and feeling enough because she can't please her partner. She's not giving her partner what they want. She feels like the marriage is crumbling. Intimacy, the interesting thing is when you're intimate and connect and touch, like it increases a hormone called oxytocin, which is our love hormone. And it's on a little teeter totter with cortisol. Like if we can get our oxytocin up, our cortisol, our stress hormone comes down. So it's really actually beneficial to stress, but not only that, it strengthens the connection in a relationship. So the less that they're actually touching and intimate and connected, there's this divide that's forming in relationships. It's getting bigger and bigger. And so she's, while it may not be at the forefront of her mind, it's contributing to a lot of those underlying, like we talked about mindset, like all of those underlying things that are foundational. The low libido is not helping and she wants it. It's just not a priority. And again, like, I always call it the triple or the trifecta or no, the triple threat of why women come to me. It's the weight gain, the high stress, and the low libido. They're all connected.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, we work on the other two and amazingly libido comes back. So
ta-da. Well, and I want to push back a little bit. Like the first two things on your list of like why it matters were about the partner. But I think to your point, like as much as like, yes, I want to please my partner. Yes, I want him to be engaged and satisfied and get what he needs and blah, blah, blah. But I do think as a well-being practitioner, we are sexual beings. And when we look at whether we're talking about bonobos or chimpanzees, like our closest mammalian cousins are very sexual, right? When we look at pre-industrialized, indigenous populations, they tend to be having sex way more than someone in an industrialized household. And they have, better stress profiles, better hormone profiles. And it's funny, like how often I'll read a nutrition book that's talking about primal or paleo or whatever. And they're talking about the Hadza and, these natural diets and whatever. And that's why they have lower instances of heart disease. But when we look at blue zone populations, when we look at the places on the planet that have active people in their, centenarians, they're over the age of 100, high functioning, great health, they're having a ton of sex. And I believe that it's wired into our well-being to be sexual beings, but stress is a poison.
Well, it's funny you said that, because I actually a few years ago went to one of the blue zones in Costa Rica, and it's really interesting when you were there. They're very connected. They're very present. They don't have the internet. They're very family oriented. Like their stress level, it's no big deal. Like we were late for something, we're like, we're sorry. Like no big deal. Like whatever.
Why you
like,
care? We're cool.
And so when you look that they're so immersed in their culture and their nature and their family, they're so present. They're not highly stressed. They're very much go with the flow. And it's just cultural. Like it's just ingrained in them. This is how they live. And it was really interesting to be immersed in that culture and see how they live. And like, they don't have the perfect diets, like perfect, quote unquote, right?
Yeah,
like they're eating tons of rice and beans and all the stuff that we like. A lot of people say, don't eat that, right? They're eating, but a lot of it's organic, like naturally organic. They don't have pesticides down there, although they're starting to come. They're seeing the incidences of cancer. I'm not going to go off on that tangent but, because I could totally geek out, because it fascinates me.
Yes, me too.
But it just translates that all these like natural, like these lifestyle things that they do, including the food that they eat and their connection and their presence, really, it just, they have a great libido because they're so present with their family and their partners.
Yep. Traditional food cultures, highly connected, low incidences of smoking, moderate or low alcohol use, but they tend to sleep on very normal schedules. And like I say, they tend to get down a fair amount more than we do.
Yeah.
So let's wrap up with this. If somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh my God, this is me, like, where do they start?
Where do they start? We covered a lot of different topics today. And I think, it's just the three biggest ones are foundational before we get to the hormones, right? Are like mindset, like we were talking about. How are you communicating your needs? Are you that superwoman, Wonder Woman that we were talking about? Can you give up a few things? I talk about my 4 Ds. What do you have to do in a day? What can you delegate? Which is ask someone else to do. What can you put off for another day?
Delay.
And what can you delay? And what can you completely delete? Right? Those are my 4 Ds. So ask yourself, like, if you're feeling overwhelmed, which probably many of your listeners are, because we're women, we put 10 things on our day when we can get only 3 things done. And then that sets us up for feeling like a failure at the end of the day. Like, what can you do with those 4 Ds in your day that can get you through your day? So at night you celebrate the things that you did get done, because those things on your list, which were 3, you got them done. And you actually got time to sit down because you're actually asking others to help you and you're communicating. So, again, just awareness of your mindset, working on it as a whole doesn't happen overnight. Communication and stress level. And again, it's awareness around each of these, right? We start with awareness. Like we can't change anything unless we're aware of what we're currently doing. Right. So like, if you're running around flapping your wings, like, I'm stressed about what? And like, what can we do about that? Right. I'm not going to go tell you sit 5 minutes in the corner and meditate. Right. I'm going to ask you, what are you stressed about? And what are we going to do about it? Right. Yeah. Like, let's have a plan of what, one thing at a time. I mean, if you have a list of 10 things that stress you out on a daily basis, start with 1.
Yeah. Love it. We'll leave it there. Dr. Renee, thank you so much for your time. Where can we find you?
All over social media. Dr. Renee Wellenstein. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. I have a podcast, The Real Heal, intimate conversations with holistic health experts. I also have a website, drreneewellenstein.com. So I am all over. It's hard not to find me
in the show notes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.